in your first book, so you give us a really deep poetic engagement with the phenomenon of zombies, both as a pop culture trope, I guess, and also as a tradition, a cultural tradition in Haiti. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you navigate the distance between those two things, those two aspects of the phenomenon that we refer to as zombies.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I just want to make sure you can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm also recovering from bronchitis, so my voice is doing this thing. So I'll try to sound less croaky, but good luck to me. Yeah, Wayde, that's a great question. Let me see if I can start with a little bit of a backstory with how I started or how I came to write this collection. I was at the writer's studio, I believe when I think you were the director at that time. I came in with a very vague concept of what I wanted to write. And my portfolio was due sometime in November. And in October, we're just a few weeks away from Halloween. And I was thinking, ugh, I really don't like Halloween. I don't like the creatures. I certainly don't like zombies. But I started thinking, what is it that I don't like about zombies? And I just kind of got to deep diving about zombies, because the original zombies are, for the purpose of this conversation, Haitian in origin, although they come from even farther back home. And then I thought, zombies, or I feel like they really explicate or talk about Black life, what it feels like to exist, sort of being in that undead, that liminal space as we exist. So I thought, let me write to that. And so I started writing to that, and I also realized that everyone knows zombies like the Western trope zombies, or consumerism or disease vector, that kind of thing. I was like, that's not it exactly. In Haitian cosmology, the zombie is about enslavement, about spiritual theft, the afterlife of colonial violence. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that. And so I find that, it's a great way to get into the topic of Black life, of what it's like living here in these territories. But it's like just navigating that identity. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, I think about the trope that we have in the modern zombie apocalypse. That whole kind of trope comes from Legend, in that book by Richard Matheson. And in that, he doesn't name them as zombies. That comes later with Night of the Living Dead and that. Originally, so kind of like his own weird creation. Then they get misnamed zombies later. And then that's where you get this is when they're two totally different things, but operate under the same name.
Exactly.
It's a very strange thing.
And there was that interesting thing of a lot of, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I think I alluded to this in this collection. When American occupying forces landed in Haiti in 1915, and redid the Constitution, stole the money, sent it to New York, et cetera, they also encountered Haitians and their understanding of zombies. And a lot of lieutenants or returning military personnel started writing stories about these zombies and were making money writing these stories. And so these sort of ended up in American public consciousness with their interpretation, of course. So you get Magic Island, I forget the name of the author. Anyways, yeah, Magic Island by some dude.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, talking to Caleb about the difference between writers and musicians, and he'll know what a hook is. And sometimes we use that as a hook into you know, something deeper, like when I've written about hip hop, it's, you know, it's kind of an entry point, and then when you to go further into it, it's more about the culture. Would you say that's kind of the part of what you're doing with?
Yeah, I definitely use it as a hook to get in. And I think for folks who do read it, come in thinking like, I'm gonna write about, or I'm gonna read about zombies, and expect that they're gonna read about the zombies they know, and then it's something else. You know, it's a great way to then get people to think about re-sacralizing, for lack of a better term, the concept of zombie in Haitian culture. So I think it's a good way to, yeah, make people think.
And the essay, though, I still haven't finished talking.
Yeah.
What was the extension of that?
Yeah.
Was that extending from?
It was extending from this collection, because I did find that I actually, originally when I wanted to write about zombies, I thought I'm gonna just do an academic essay. And I thought, nah, there's no way I could cover all the things. But then I felt like I couldn't cover all the things in this collection. And I wanted to sort of give a bit more of an explanation of why I'm talking about zombies.
What was it?
Like, well, tell us more.
What more was there?
Yeah, so I'm gonna get a little bit cerebral, I apologize. But one aspect of this essay was to talk about how in writing this collection, I struggled with the concept of putting it all out there, but also the expectation that I would be an expert. I'm not an expert on zombies, even though I come from a lineage of Haitians who would know. I've never set foot in Haiti. I have this sort of, and maybe we'll explore that later, a sort of exile relationship with Haiti, but not the traditional exile relationship. And so I wanted this collection to be able to do what it wanted to do and not have to explain too much, not be academic, but also not feel like this is the complete answer on what it's like to be a zombie. Because there is more to that. This won't be the final explanation. And so I talk about the concept of opacité, or opacity, being able to sort of tell the truth without having to be necessarily legible, without having to over-explain, and ensure that people understand. So it's understandable to those who want to understand, and you should feel okay with not understanding all of it.
A little bit like almost like Keats's negative capability.
That's right.
That idea of working. Keats thought the best poetry was written when you were a little bit past your own understanding of what it meant. That you, the poet, right? That you were a little bit just beyond your own understanding. It's like that's the sweet spot. It's called negative capability. So as the first books are hard to write, and there's always this story behind getting the book going from not having to go to do the process of writing it and then getting it published too. So I wonder what was the most difficult thing about getting this book into print? How long did it take? What's the story of how this came to be?
I have to say that my publishing record is maybe a bit irregular, and I was quite lucky. So I think you might remember for a while, maybe about a decade, people thought of me or described me as a spoken word artist. And so I was always reading and performing, and not necessarily writing, or, I wasn't published anywhere. At some point, I think a couple of folks at Talon Books were at a couple events and had approached me and asked me if I was published anywhere. And I said no. And that was the end of that. I didn't really think about it. And then maybe a few months later, I was asked by Cecily Nicholson, who's also a Talon Book writer, well decorated, quite amazing, that Talon was interested in in a manuscript, could I send something? So I did, but here's the part where it was challenging. I didn't know what that meant. You know, you don't know what you don't know until you're in the midst of it. So I'm sitting there, I agonize, I'm like, is the manuscript 9 pages? Is it 12? What's the deadline? What exactly do you want? I didn't really have a title, like all of these things. And luckily they were generous enough, they just said, send what you have, and they would consider it. I think Kevin Williams there, about a week or 2 later, was like, we want to publish your work. And so it was a week, yeah, that was really fast, yeah. I think by November I found out, oh great, it was 2019. Also, I was in the midst of a deep depression. So, so I didn't know what I was supposed to do. The book came out in
How much of it did you have
but
done when they said yes?
probably about 3/4 of it, mostly from the studio, after I decided I want to write about zombies at the 11th hour.
and were you thinking of it as a book, like as, or just?
I was not.
Yeah, because it very much feels like a cohesive book on
Yeah.
not one topic, but it's got sections, but
Yeah.
it is a cohesive book. So it feels like this was written with the intention it was going to be a book.
It wasn't, and I'm going to tell you some of my little tricks. Excuse me, I have a little cough. I had whatever number of pages I had, and then one day I sort of printed what I had, put it on a window, and I thought, well, I need to double about what's here. So I just started cutting, like physically cutting pieces, rearranging them. I go, yeah, that looks about right. This makes sense here. One sentence is great for about 1 page. Maybe let's do 4 pages of 1 sentences. Like literally those were the decisions I was making in terms of putting together this book. And then I like to think in blocks so that I don't get lost. So I thought, I like 3. It's a good even number. And I was thinking of the middle passage, 3-part, triangulation, all of that. And so this is how I ended up sectioning the book. I forget what titles I had, but yeah.
Origins, beginnings of sorts,
Yeah.
transatlantic zombie passages, east, salt caves of the ocean.
That's right.
And they are just discrete sections, right?
That's right, yeah.
And then did you work with an editor?
So this is here's what did you learn and what are the things you didn't know kind of part of it. The Talon editor had said to me, you might want to have an editor look at this. And I didn't understand what that meant. I was also a little bit of a chicken caca. So I didn't want to ask questions like, you want to publish me? I'm just going to make sure I just get things in. And knowing what I know now, I should have worked with someone before I went to the Talon editors. So I think given the response the way it was, or as polished as it is, I was quite lucky. The editor at Talon was also a very curious person. He asked a lot of questions. He was very respectful, even though he didn't know anything about the subject, but he deep dived at every stage of the editing process. So I felt that my work was allowed to shine. There was very little fiddling that they did with my work, which can be both a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah.
And then did people stop referring to you as a spoken word poet after that?
I feel like they did. I'm like, but wait, I could be many things.
That was the same thing with me.
Yeah.
Looking back in the 90s, people were a spoken word poet. Then my first book came out, and it just stopped. And it's like, oh, I guess
you're established.
French poet.
Yeah, you're an establishment now.
Still do. Maybe I'll come back to that. So poetry. You chose to write poetry at some point. That was the first. Now later on, you've done other things. You referred to essay already, and we'll talk a little bit about fiction. But why poetry first? Why was that before you chose to write? And what is it What is it that poetry can do that other forms can't?
Yeah. Like a lot of things in my life, poetry was accidental. It started with a very ranty piece of text when I was an undergraduate student at UBC, struggling as a Black student, and of course I'm gonna date myself, but I mean, we got the silver, so I guess here we are. But it was the early 2000s, and I remember walking across UBC campus, passing the same Black student maybe every 2 or 3 days. That's how few of us there were. And so I remember I was asked, hey, do you want to contribute something about, racism on campus for the UBC? There was a special issue, it was called Race is the Issue. So I wrote this long ranty poem, I guess it was a poem. It was front page, and I immediately felt exposed. I mean, nobody knew who I was, but I assumed everyone knew Junie wrote that and is lambasting the university about this. And then I just started writing poems. And then I started reading things. And then I went at your opening event for Bluesprint and chatted you up. And I believe either that event or another event, you were like, send me your poems. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll send you some poems. And Wayde is such a generous kind of a mentor figure. And so I think I might be making this up, but I think a lot of current contemporary Black poets in BC have either been mentored or crossed paths with Wayde, and so here we are. So I'm super grateful for that. I'm really here because of Wayde, in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, so by the time I'd met you and then started writing and then just sort of striking it out on my own, poetry became the default way that I expressed myself. But it really truly felt like I'm just winging it, I'm just saying words, I'm just expressing myself. This is the medium to do it in.
That makes a lot of sense. That's the same with me, I think, too.
Yeah.
I think for political ranting, poetry is
It's perfect.
the first you start.
That's right.
And then after you keep doing it long enough, you start going, well, it might as well be a really good rant.
Exactly.
Then craft comes in.
That's right. Then you're like, oh, that's weird.
I think that makes sense because it's an emotional form.
Absolutely.
It accesses feelings very directly.
Absolutely.
Where fiction is very different.
That's right. And that said, because of that, I think I'm now at a place where it's like, depending on the subject matter or what I'm trying to say, I might choose poetry, I might choose prose, I might choose essay as my form of or mode of writing or expressing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so who are your poetic influences? Who are the poets that you admire most?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to always say the classic Dion Brand. But there are so many. There are even contemporary ones I really like. Juliano Kopitek, I like Chantal Gibson, Tolu, who I never remember how to say his last name. I think the other, and we may have talked about this at some point, the interesting thing about this time that we're in is that there are so many Black poets and writers that I actually can't keep up with who's out there. I need to further expand my poetic influences and curiosities.
Yeah, I saw Henry Louis Gates speak once in Seattle, and somebody in the audience asked. Henry Louis Gates is the head of the African American Studies Department at Harvard, and kind of a really key academic in Black literature in the States. And somebody asked him, this would have been the 90s, and somebody asked him how has Black writing in the United States changed since you became an academic? And he said, the difference is I used to be able to read every book by a Black author that came out, and he said, and at a certain point I lost the ability to keep up. And he said, I counted that as a success.
Yeah, I think we're in that time here in Canada.
It is like that in
Yeah.
terms of Canada. Do you want to read a little bit of your first book?
Yeah. Before I read, I just wanted to read one of the, or two of the epigraphs. Being haunted draws us effectively, sometimes against our will, and always a bit magically. And this is Avery F. Gordon, a sociologist who wrote Ghostly Matters, Haunting and the Sociological Imagination. And then from Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me, How Do I Live Free in This Black Body? Here, it's not the same ocean, I know, but ocean is ocean and it's salty. You still have to watery squint your eyes when the sun blazing scorches the surface, shimmers, the horizon shifts. It's still the same sound pattern of the recede. Come in, recede further, come in again. The sound of pressure builds, crashes, pounds. The tug and insistent pull when you're in tune with the ocean. Sink toes, this land borrowed far from another, this constant, familiar uneasiness. How to write about what you carry but don't know. Strange inheritance one carries, everyday code understandable if born of Haitian soil, submerged in salt sea, bracing rivers, falls. I start with origins. I was not here, I am not there. Rather, the line from here, today, tethers collective trauma, umbilical, centuries old. Those bones bridge over oceans, triangulated passages. Rationalize, trace the origins, collective trauma here, scattered there, no real home, as in, what does it matter? It's happened. Zombies reimagined, response, enslavement etched in bones. I asked Mother about zombies, the back home kind. She won't speak except to start and stop, words caught in her throat. I asked Father, I am a man of God, don't pay attention to such things. Silence. So I asked books from the library, keep them from touching other books or pressed by the same night wind against my back. I asked for help, guidance to write these words, offer a prayer remembering, give thanks before asking favors. Zombification process, dezombification, Haitian zombie. Ask the library and the internet vague and also specific questions, at least 11 different ways. I use air quotes, asterisks, the Catholic thing. I tried zombie, Walking Dead, even comparative. Salt, ocean, eat salt, reanimation. At night, the pile of library books stay outside my bedroom. René Depeste, Hadriana in All My Dreams, Wayde Davis's Passage of Darkness, maybe the books with the Veve drawings like stick and poke tattoos, their shapes, arrows draw down, the laws to language of gods I don't know. I don't want supernatural gifts. I jump at shadows, words rattle about, stop their noise as the SkyTrain screeches around the bend. Luminous eye of the train, blind my wide open ones. I wonder if I've accidentally summoned these gods to wake this husk. Crack of the whip call, our dead lips sewed, black thread or wire, might not answer. Stuck. I asked for help. I read accounts appropriated, reinvented white tales of zombies. Watch I Am Legend, 28 Days, World War Z, Night of the Living Dead, Shaun of the Dead, iZombie, Warm Bodies, Walking Dead, Santa Clarita Diet, my personal favorite, Dawn of the Dead, now mass culture, mass consumption zombie, disease vector technology, symbol for mindless labor, not quite slave labor, everyone for themselves zombie, sexual liberation taboo, zombie futurism, in which zombie has consumed the consumerist, escapist fantasy. When mother disappears into the crisp winter darkness to remember old white folks, zombie-like shuffle, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, fend off unwanted advances. He's old, he doesn't mean anything. While father sits, blue mercury idling, breath, fog, weight. They'll rummage in her bag to make sure no thing has been lifted. Theft, against company policy, simultaneously ply her with stale, bland Christmas cake charity, also against company policy. Triple shift, work nights during the day, cook and clean, no pay, between snatches, sleep. Shall I continue? Yeah. This is how to write about zombies. Silence met with silence, dread imbued in every cell, feverish search. Write about zombies, you'll need iron will, brace your heart.
Thank you. So maybe zooming out a little bit. So together with others in 2002, you co-founded the Hogan's Alley. We worked in that organization together, which has gone through permutations and now has become the Hogan's Alley Society in Vancouver, which is on the brink of having a Black cultural center.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, I feel like a lot of Black writers, you do double duty in things. So it's not just writing, but also activism. How does the activism that you've done intersect with your creative work? Or are they separate domains?
I don't think they can be separate domains. I think it also kind of keeps you honest. I mean, how do you write about the things without not just experiencing the things that we talk about, but also working to alleviate those conditions? And I'm not saying that every one of us who's an activist has to be a creative or vice versa, but I think that there is an intersection with art and activism that's always been there. And for me, who likes to be multimodal, I think it is important for me to have those outlets and they inform each other. I don't know how else to work. Yeah.
Do you find that you do, it seems like you write about different things than activism that you did though. So
That's
are
true.
they different in that way? Like, does it kind of, you know, is it a kind of a place where you say some of the things that activism doesn't say, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, let me use my work example and see if that will sort of explain. I've worked in the downtown east side for probably more than a decade for sure, probably 20 years. You won't necessarily find me writing about that in my work, even though there would be a lot to say. And in particular, writing as a Black person in the downtown east side, doing that work. So both being in this weird junction of being an administrator, working in a neighborhood that's been called the poorest postal code, is a very strange position to be in. And I've never wanted to be voyeuristic in that regard. And similarly with activism, I think there's a place to just do the work. I think you can talk about it, I think you can write about it obliquely or however, but I don't think that I would be writing directly about activism or that work. But it does inform, like it keeps me intellectually agile, if that makes sense. Yeah? Yeah.
Do you think about audience that way? Like, who is your audience? Do you have a particular idea who you're writing to when you're writing, or you just
I primarily try to, this is going to be a multi-part answer. Yes, I want to write to other Black folks. They're my primary audience, but they're not my only audience. At the same time, I don't want to be constrained by thinking about audience. That's the quickest way for me to not write. So I have to pretend that my parents don't exist, for example. I don't know if I have time for a story, but my dad not recently, but after I did a post about publishing this book, and he's sort of on Facebook, sort of not. And he was like, I think I read something about how you wrote a movie, or you're in a movie. Like, he was very confused. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad, but no, me, movie? No, absolutely not. And so it's like this big unspoken secret at this point, at my big old age, that I write. But originally when I wrote this first collection, I didn't have a relationship with my father. He'd been out of my life 25 years. I think if that was not the case, I wouldn't have written this book. And then I wrote this second book, and I had to pretend that my dad didn't know anything about me. But that's just that, and it's also thinking about accountability to community. And thinking about audience. If I think too hard about who's going to read what I'm reading, will they understand, will they relate, puts a bit of a pressure that I don't necessarily want.
Yeah, it's a tricky dance.
Yeah.
Between the two things. Have you noticed the institutional challenges? Thinking here about the writing scene and the writing industry and the infrastructure around writing, particular challenges to Black writers, to you as a Black writer, other friends that you know that are writing. What makes it harder, and do you have any advice for how to navigate those challenges?
Yeah, I'm gonna start by saying that I'm also still learning. So any advice I give, come back in 10 years and see if I have that same advice. But I want to say that there's something very interesting about being a Black writer, especially in BC. I think you have to just write and figure it out and, live on a hope and prayer, because I don't feel that there are enough spaces, institutional or otherwise, enough mentors, enough editors, like all of that, to properly support Black writers. And I don't know if this is going to relate to what I'm answering, so I'm just gonna say this. I recently, maybe a year or two ago, was invited to read at the new Black Arts Center in Surrey, in Vancouver, or Surrey, sorry, not Vancouver. And so that was 2 years ago. It was the first time I read to an audience of mostly Black people. I'd never experienced this, and I've been in BC over 20 years. And not only was that mind-blowing, it was the fact that everyone there was young, and genius and brilliant. Like, I almost was like, why am I up here reading? Like, there were some serious genius writers, and they're not being necessarily mentored. I don't know where they're finding the words and how they're doing this, but it makes sense to me that we're always gonna kind of have to be scrappy and figure it out and write. So whether there's someone guiding us or not, we're gonna do it. Now, if we want to really have a presence in the book market, we would definitely need more editors who understand our work. And not just that, but editors who aren't afraid to edit us. I think that's a challenge. Often people think, you're a Black writer, you must know. We're not gonna touch your words. And I think that's kind of dangerous. Because another thing that I want to say is an issue is we don't have people warning us about the pitfalls of having to write a trauma narrative or trauma porn in order to make it. And so often you find that we're writing these things and this is what makes you interesting or marketable. And I want for us that that's not a continued practice. I think what's valuable is seeing ourselves in the variety of writers out there. So for example, being introduced to the work of, and this is fiction, of Raven Lilani, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so me. Okay, well, no, not the affair business and home wrecking stuff, I want to be clear. But also I don't want to spoil the book. But what I'm trying to say is that we have so many varied experiences just in being Black, and we're, we use Black as this category, but we're African, we're Haitian, we're Trinidadian, we're Jamaican, we're Canadian, or born here, we're mixed, we're all of these things, and there isn't a single story that we possess. And so having a variety of editors who understand that would bring these variety of stories and experiences.
And having a critical mass of
Yes.
people publishing.
Exactly.
It's just as you say, when the numbers are small and they're stingy with, who the gatekeepers bring in through the gates, then the stories are flatter and they're more kind of what the audience wants.
Exactly.
And I know, a certain Canadian literary agent dealing with a writer friend of mine said, Canadians love first generation immigrant stories. What they don't love are second generation immigrant stories. Like they don't really, if you look at the big hits, they're about the generation that comes to Canada.
That's right.
And yeah, they go through trauma and stuff, but ultimately are grateful. But the kids growing up in racism, that's too real. That's not exotic or palatable. And so this agent was literally like, oh, nice book. Can you instead make it about the generation before? Because there's this and this and this success.
That's right.
In that one. And that's, I think, something we have to crack. That's, we can't be chasing those tastes.
That's right.
It has to be the stories as they are, and all the diversity as you just explained.
That's right.
And that requires lots of different people getting published in different forms, in different spaces. And that requires them to open that up.
That's right. And seeing that there are values in these different stories. Like, when I don't know if there's time to say this, but the first book I read by someone who was Haitian was Breathize Memory, Edwidge Tiohtià. And she's Haitian American. And I remember I would have been like 21 when I first read her. And thinking, oh my goodness, a lot of things about my life make sense, or how my parents raised me. I just thought it was just my quirky immigrant Haitian parents who were really strict and Seventh-day Adventists, But it would have been nice to know that there are stories that mimic that. And yet that wasn't enough, right? Then I'm reading Danny Lafayette, but he's an exile, so he's not quite my experience, right? So I want to write about what it's like being me, born here, of immigrant parents, and navigating 4 different provinces and, all those kinds of things.
Will you read a little bit more?
Absolutely. I'm going to read from the second collection. I'm going to say a little bit that the second collection was a bit different. It was written just before, parts of it were written just before COVID, though It's All was written or published during the pandemic. So I never got to tour my book, the first book anyways. But this book was written at a difficult time. Originally I wanted to write about what it was like to have a pulmonary embolism, and I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And I thought, let me write about how chaotic it is to work in the downtown east side. I was like, I'm not gonna really do that either. And I just wrote whatever. And so this is whatever. Somebody said this felt like a concept album. So I'll take it. So I apologize for the depressing parts, but you gotta know about Black depression too, and Black joy, but I did worry about airing out the laundry. At work when I log in, my email's number in the 3 digits. Still, emerged from my 4-day migraine. And previous to that, my 2-week vacation, working at home, catching up, staycation. And previous to that, a number of breaks that have done nothing to bring my stress or workload down. I start the 20th to-do list that never gets shorter, and my heart begins its erratic thumping. I read Goop, please don't ask me why I did that. What will Gwyneth Paltrow tell me? Make room in your schedule for free time and activities that you truly love. Start the day with a breakfast that helps manage blood sugar levels. Prioritize sleep. Do your best to remove unnecessary stressors. I read the health and wellness articles, fantasize about implementing some of the tips to lower my stress. My mornings start with phone screeches, alarm tones meant to get me out of bed immediately, jumpstart my sapped heart, caffeinated dopamine courses through my nervous system. Sugary sweet pastry ensures saccharine joy, sugary sweet pastry ensures saccharine joy, high sticks around. Long enough to get dressed and head out the door. So much for Goop, so much for grace. This is an email. Fake but also real. Mostly real. Subject, strategic priorities. Your email did not find me well. Your email instead has found me with a mountain of work to do, and people need me. They need me to do it, the work I mean. I don't want to be needed. I want to abdicate from responsibility, but I'm the cleanup crew. If you know, you know. I read a debunked theory that women with endometriosis put their careers first, before themselves. Some theories persist, work before health, and here I am, signed, all the worst. On my nth visit to yet another medical professional, when the medical office assistant ushers me down the hall and asks me to get on the scale, it fails to tell her that the numbers reflect the cares I neglect to dispense, emails I forget to dispatch, including the ones sitting rent-free in my brain, the owed return phone calls and text messages and emails and to-dos and 252 open tabs. And unfinished, and this is very real. I was just on my iPhone. And 252 open tabs and unfinished conversations settling in my chest, on my hips, in my thighs. I eat my feelings because it's unacceptable to have them. No, that's not true. I portion control my emotions and keep my mouth busy so as not to earn the angry Black woman badge. The amount of viral headlines I ingest daily, the ones with constant images of nooses around our necks, the funeral pyres I build in these heart chambers, and the ashes that collect cold, the oxygen I hold trapped in this ribbed cage, the adipose tissue cradling the climate, quotidian knife-tipped insults, slights, Passovers, the go back home slurs, the where are you really from not so innocent queries, the subtext beneath your English is perfect, you're really smart, sorry this place has been rented, we're simply not answering the door, though I saw a hand quickly part the pointelle white curtain. Your paper is too angry, too personal, not objective, perhaps plagiarized. I turn the other cheek, no, the face, no, the entire body, as I offer my back as a shield. Still too much weight. The medical office assistant scribbles the number in my file.
Okay. I'm just gonna ask 2 questions, and then maybe we'll read a little bit of fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are about fiction. So you've taken that turn from poetry to fiction. And I mean, not a lot of people have read your fiction. I don't know if it's been published anywhere yet.
No.
But I'm getting to read it, which is great. And so I've the inside track on this, but I can see how it's going to be the third of these books in my head. That's probably the fiction that I'm reading now, because it's really good. And I wonder, so you're doing this interesting thing where sometimes you're writing about history, really interesting aspects of history on Hispaniola, and then also writing speculative, and sometimes even, I guess, what would be called the Afrofuturist in a way. How does that work? Why all those 3 things?
Yeah.
And,
I think there's a lot of reasons. One, you all don't necessarily know me, but fiction is very brand new to me, and I'm thriving in it. And again, this is very much thanks to Wayde. I feel that both my personal lineage and my interests, the fiction lineage I'm interested in, tends to lie in magical realism, in speculative, in sort of futurist ways of thinking of ourselves. And so that informs, again, I think you'll notice this in my writing. I don't know how to do one thing just one way. It's always multi-layered. There's 50 things going on, okay, maybe 4. But there's always a lot of things going on because I feel that that best explains what I want to talk about. And the sort of the Black experience, or what I like to talk about, you know, our quirky interior lives, the things that we don't get to talk about because it's not always safe to talk about it. I like to write about it kind of obliquely, if that makes sense. I like to bring in the surreal, the ghostly. But for those of us who are Black, I think a lot of our lives are about the ghostly, the surreal, the weird, the magical realist. And to live, to exist, is to sort of think future. And so that's how I like to write. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's one of your works of fiction seems to maybe come out of one of the lines in your first book, which is we have to address the ocean in the room.
Yes.
Which you develop, I think,
Yeah.
into one of the stories that you've written.
Yes.
So that's interesting. So it is of a piece, right? It's moving towards something, but that little line becomes a whole magic realist thing.
Yes.
It's something that you're working on, which is really interesting.
And I find that I guess I'm a bit of a remix artist. I will take something, a thread of something from one piece of work and bring it forward. I actually think of my works as being connected. They might not look like it, but there is a connection. There's always a through line.
The other question is just the AI dystopia we face. Like, so we're facing this weird crisis of storytelling, and do you think we're going to survive it? Are we as creatives going to survive this? And does this? I call it the AI crisis, because I think that's what it is. Does the AI crisis affect marginalized writers harder?
Right. I've been thinking on that, and I think there's an AI crisis. I don't think we'll ever stop storytelling. I think there's enough of us who are OGs who will continue to write, who will want to write from our imagination. However, I think AI is not the only issue. I think it is a continuation of an issue that I think is facing all writers and Black writers as well. And it's the fact that our attentions our imaginations are on the attack or under attack. Our thinking, our imagination is being colonized. And I don't want to sound moralizing, I want to be clear about this. But the fact that we are all attached and tethered to our technology, and we are bombarded with a lot of nonsense, doesn't leave us time to be bored and to create. And then add the systemic and institutional challenge of being a racialized writer. Now you have to live. You gotta eat, you gotta, work to live. Where do you find time to actually be imaginative, right? And then you add AI to that. Ugh. I have deep concerns. I have deep concerns, but I think addressing how our imaginations are being captured by outside forces is the first thing we need to actually address. AI will come after. But also AI needs to burn.
Yeah, it's interesting to say you have to be bored, because I think that's true.
Yeah.
The two things to create is you have to be bored, and you have to do a thing over and over and over again to get good at it. And you have to play. That's the other thing too with creativity.
That's right.
Creativity is a kind of play, and play is an aimless thing. And I feel like if you're scrolling, you're not playing.
You're not. Yeah.
And you're filling the boredom with that instead of doing the skill over and over again, right? Like Caleb Hart didn't get good at guitar without sitting there doing it over and over and over and over again, right?
Exactly.
And then when he's playing here, he soars. But it's all those hours of just plodding away, and it's the same with us.
Yeah.
It's you have to put those hours into it, and a lot of hours do go into school.
They do.
All of us.
Yeah. Should check your screen time. 17 hours, and you're like, well, daily. There's only 24 hours, y'all. I was gonna say something, and I can't recall. Anyways, I do think that, we should be paying attention to how much we're not giving ourselves time. And actually, I know what I was gonna say. The other thing is we're in a time where we expect instant results.
Yeah.
People I want to be instantly published, and I'm hearing from folks they want multi-book deals, they want advances. Y'all, being a poet is not the way. It's not the way. It's hard work. So if you want to be good at something, you have to have time, repetition, read widely. And if we're not doing that, we're not going to be good writers.
I mean, there is some hope with it in terms of poetry. Poetry is an interesting closed circle. The most readers of poetry are other poets. That's just how it is. Like the industry around poetry, print run of 1,000 books.
Yeah.
And who buys those books? It's mostly other poets. And that means it's impervious to that, really. It's impervious to making money, but it's also impervious to being exploited for money, right?
Yeah.
So it's a kind of pure area of the field, I guess,
Yeah.
And and we still see people wanting books, right? That's the other thing that was a surprise. We still see books selling. People still want these physical objects when they have other options that are digital.
That's right.
And that's hopeful too, that carries on.
Yeah.
Will you read a little bit of your fiction, and then we'll have questions?
Okay, so I'm just going to give a little bit of a, because with fiction I can't read the whole thing and I have to start somewhere. So this story is about a woman who's a content moderator of acceptable content on social media. She's trying to figure out, navigate a relationship she started, I guess online or on an app, and potentially flying to Australia to meet this person. She's also not who she says she is to this person, so I'll leave it at that. The quarantine 15 starts as a joke, as the pounds creep surreptitiously upwards, then past 15 pounds, as the numbers on the scale now signal obesity, according to her doctor. But her barely there outfits, the ones that go from barely fitting to taking up space in her closet, have already exposed the lie her body has become. Tights graduate to sweatpants, and now she basically lives buried in the myriad furry onesies she's ordered online. Today, Dee wears a furry, dark gray mouse onesie, the front stained with takeout pad thai. She's reviewing flight submissions, quite a few labeled as terrorism, a slew of pro-Palestine posts flagged as anti-Semitic, fake profiles, misleading pyramid-like schemes. She's supposed to work fast, work through hundreds of reported submissions, but there's thousands this October, and many of her colleagues are on some sort of stress leave. Even her useless boss has messaged her personally, checking on her, and to take advantage of our generous mental health supports, like their EAP program. She deletes his Slack message. Can I please see your face? Ugh. I smashed my phone and my camera doesn't work. Don't like using my work laptop for personal stuff. Pretty sure we're being surveilled. She says it like a joke with a little eye roll emoji. She follows it with a picture she took weeks ago, angled from above, face half in shadows, hair spilling forward in a way that implies casual intimacy. The light makes her skin look ambiguous. It always does. He sends back a sad face. He says 8 months feels like a long time to only have a voice. D types, deletes, I know baby, deletes baby, types, I know. Adds a kiss. She drops a link to the soundtrack of Trouble Every Day, then disturbs him with references to the movie. It's an erotic horror film. Well, you'll like Tinder sticks. She drops something slow and bass heavy, like sweat and friction. He tells her she has incredible taste. She says she's always been particular. He says he likes that about her. Dee leans back in her chair and closes her eyes. Her apartment smells faintly of reheated noodles and fabric softener. The neighbor upstairs is pacing. The pipes click. Her laptop fan whirs. She opens another tab. At work, a profile comes up, flagged for impersonation. A woman using someone else's photo. The face is smooth, symmetrical, bright. Dee clicks through the images. They're all of the same person. None of them belong to the account holder. She marks it as a violation, clicks submit. The next item loads. She does not think about the first one anymore. Dee's phone pings. It's 11 a.m. in Australia where he is. New South Wales, he corrects. What you doing this weekend? Not much. I wish you were here. Soon. He drops a winky face and says, we should start talking about it. Talking about what? Meeting. Dee types, haha. He says, I'm serious. She sends a gif, something flirty, distracting, and he laughs, but he does not drop it. I could get time off work. Flights are cheap right now. Dee's stomach does a small internal contraction. She tells him Australia is far. Distance is just a number. She tells him she's spontaneous, and he says he loves that about her. Maybe. Gotta go. She puts her phone down, face down. Dee opens her front-facing camera by accident. The image fills the screen. Her face looks wrong to her, like something slightly out of compliance. Her cheeks are fuller than she remembers, her jaw softer, her neck thicker, her hair frizzed from sleeping in a bun too many nights in a row. She stares for a few seconds longer. She closes it. She opens their ongoing chat, types, miss you more. Dee starts Googling. She Googles lighting, Googles makeup that photographs well. She Googles contouring. She watches a video muted. The woman in the video has sharp cheekbones. mimics the motions in the air with her fingers. She does not own most of the products. She closes the tab, then she opens a new tab and Googles flights. Anywhere, she closes the tab.